Hello and welcome to the Somatic Movement and Mindset podcast with me, Clinical Somatic Educator and founder of Total Somatics, Heidi Hadley. The Somatic Movement and Mindset podcast has been designed to help you gain a deeper understanding to how your mind and body work. You will learn about your amazing mind and body and why over time you can feel pain, recurring injuries and poor posture. Within this podcast, I will teach you why this doesn't have to be your future or the norm for you. Would you like to learn how to reduce pain, move freely, and gain a new lease of life? Let's get started. Hello and welcome back. Now today, I'd like to welcome back a friend of the show and a contributor to Total Somatics, Melanie Cool. Now, Melanie is a very popular guest with Total Somatics, and so today I thought we'd get an extra special dose of Melanie. So I'm going to bring in Melanie shortly, but before I do, if you are new to Melanie Cool with the funkiest name on the planet, I'm going to just tell you a few little bits and bobs about her. So Melanie is a licensed psychotherapist. She's an integrative medicine and nutritional behavioral health provider. She's also a motivational speaker, which you will pick up very quickly when we start talking together. Melanie's also an author and she's a CrossFit trainer. So she's got a huge toolkit to work with. But Melanie is also known as the health and happiness expert, and she holds a BA in psychology and an MA in counseling psychology. And she has helped thousands of people globally to transition from surviving to thriving. So without further ado, let me welcome Melanie into the show. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you, Heidi. It's just so great to be here. I love it. I love it.
It's brilliant. Now, we've got together a few times, and I just thought as we're towards the end of the year, it's really nice sometimes, isn't it, just to have that self-assessment, see how we've gone. And sometimes, you know, we start the new year with all these intentions and then things shift off quite quickly. But for some people, this year has been quite stressful. They've had quite a lot of trauma. And for others, sickness has been hitting them probably every other month, you know. So people think that we're kind of over these different periods of sickness and then they hit us again. And it can really get us down for fatigue and just losing our mojo, really. So how can they compassionately and gently change their mindset and their health approaches as we start to go in towards a new year and kind of creating a focus on self-care and good health? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's very true. I have many friends that have suffered with one sickness or another throughout the year. And, you know, we thought that when the pandemic ended, everything would go back to normal or be fine. But, you know, life just continually throws stuff at us. And it can leave us feeling burned out, overwhelmed, and exhausted. And also what I find with my clients and also myself, maybe you can relate, we get really judgy about ourselves. And we start to have this negative self-talk and we put ourselves down and we spend a lot of time constantly wishing that things were different. And so I think the first thing I would recommend is just turning any type of judgment into compassion. And a good way to do that is to imagine, what would your best friend say to you? So if you're sitting there moaning and groaning and complaining about the year you've had, what would your best friend say? Heidi, pretend to be my best friend. What would you say to me?
I go, look at all the wonderful things that you've done this year. Look how far you've come. Just stop and see how you've kind of evolved as a person as well. Because sometimes we think we've got to make these humongous shifts and changes, haven't we? But sometimes it's just a little shift. It could be things such as we just don't watch so much of that catastrophizing news. We're getting much more selective about what we read. Maybe we've started to listen to more empowering information like these cool podcasts here, or maybe ebooks, or should I say audiobooks, those sorts of things. So they don't have to be huge, do they? It's just those little steps that start to change our entire outlook, and it is just an evolution, isn't it, as time goes on?
Yeah, I have people just say to themselves, "You're okay.
Yeah.
You're okay." I mean, you've been through a lot, and as I've said before, you have a 100% success rate at surviving all of this stuff, and you are okay. I have a friend who has been sick all year, just one thing or another, and she got so depressed, and she was just laying in her bed bemoaning her life and her body and her circumstances, and she realized that her room was very dark and that maybe that was contributing to her low feeling. And so she had a skylight installed in her room. So she's still sick and not feeling well, but she has more light in her room. And that helped her feel better. So I just recommend doing something nice for yourself. And it doesn't have to be big, like you just said, it can be something small, but treat yourself like your own best friend.
Yeah. And also, really, Melanie, it's waking up every day and thinking, I've still got another day of life, which might
Yes.
sound a little bit dramatic, but there are many people that would, that we may have lost along the way, and they would have loved to have had the opportunity to wake up and have another day. So it's kind of, I mean, one of my favorite people over the time is Dr. Wayne Dyer. And
Yes.
I love his, I mean, he's got such a lovely energy. And I've got quotes here in the kitchen in the clinic, and one of them that's laminated says, it all begins with how we choose to think. When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And it's so true. And Wayne Dyer actually said he would fling his legs out of bed, put them on the floor, stand up and think, I've got another day. And just that on its
Yes.
own is huge, isn't it?
Yes. I don't remember where I heard this. I learned it a long time ago, but one thing that can really help is to change your have tos to get tos. So like
Mm,
I have to get out of bed. I
mm,
get to get out of bed, right?
mm,
I have to do my laundry. I get to do my laundry. I have to do my dishes. I get to do my dishes because actually our lives are really abundant, right? And we can
yeah.
get stuck in that negative mindset. So just switching out the word have to get to changes your entire energy.
It is. And just thinking of that, how do you feel that if people have been pretty tough on themselves, how can they make those healthy goals and intentions long term without feeling guilty, emotionally, if they have a little bit of a hiccup, and there's times that it kind of shifts, how can they shift that focus?
Yeah, well, we all fall off the wagon, right?
Yeah.
So it's one day at a time, and every day is a fresh start. So
Yeah.
any day, right? You can just get right back on track. And I always say it all starts with drinking water.
Yeah. It does,
Yeah.
and we all get those wobbly moments, don't we? But I always think to myself, there's that thing of the 80-20 principle. So if 80% of the time we're kind of doing our intentional stuff, if that 20% is just the odd day where we might have a wobbly moment and reach for the sugar or whatever it is, that happened that day. We can get back on the wagon the next day. And it's really about lifestyle long term, isn't it? So
Yes.
uh and
Yeah.
there are some years that it just everything goes against you. We've talked about this in previous podcasts, isn't it? But
Mhm.
really, it becomes a character building exercise, even though we don't think it at the time. So,
Yeah.
um,
I think we get caught up in we have to make these big changes, right? Like big changes. And that big changes take time. And the way that big changes are made are with small daily doable habits that you do consistently. So maybe somebody wants to lose a large amount of weight. Well, really, it's about making sure every day you're getting water and you're getting sleep and you're eating a lot of colorful foods in your diet and you're moving your bodies. And when we do those things consistently every day, the weight loss, it's a side effect, right? Um, and I always say one thing at a time, like just
yeah,
focus on drinking water. And when you've got that down, focus on getting sleep. When you've got that down, focus on getting sugar and processed food out of your diet. Eat real food. When you've got
Yeah.
that down, move your body. I mean, this can take a long time, but it will create sustainable change, right? So I always say,
Yeah.
what can you do? I always think of can in capital letters. What
Mm.
can you do? Well, you can't do all those things at once. That's why we fail, right? So can you drink a glass of water? Great, go do it, right? Yeah.
And I think you said it's spot on with that, is the intention is in the frame. So instead of it being I've got to lose weight, it's actually changing it to I actually want my internal world to feel more regulated, my hormones, my gut health, my sleep, my immunity. I want every single cell to have enough hydration in it, my fascia, all these sorts of things. When we actually focus on our well-being, instead of the whatever the scales are showing, that's where we then, as you say, it becomes an added byproduct or a benefit that you think I've lost weight. But things like hair might thicken up, your skin gets better, as I say, your sleep gets better. And if your sleep gets better, it means all that amyloid, the plaque that builds up around the brain, that will start to be cleared away, because the deeper and the better quality sleep means that the cleaning department in your brain can clear a lot of that debris around. So all of that is really what's happening, because I'm sure you've met people like this, that they will lose weight and then all of a sudden it plateaus and they're not losing any more on the scales. But there's often because the visceral fat is being burnt, but because they're not seeing on the scales that fat, they can get disheartened. And it's literally when you change that focus to creating a well-being mindset, I think that's going to have more long-term effects.
Yeah, it's a hard sell though, right? Because people want
Yes.
quick fixes, and that's why people spend billions of dollars on the diet industry, right? But it doesn't work. Weight loss is a side effect of health and happiness,
Yeah.
nothing else.
Absolutely.
Don't
Yeah.
set out to lose weight. Set out to get healthy and to get happy, and you will be amazed at what
Yeah.
happens.
Yes, true. Yes.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, just sort of thinking again about the year, because everyone gets quite
Mhm.
reflective, don't they, towards the end of the year. Some
Yeah.
people will be really pleased to see the end of this year. It's been a pretty stressful, traumatic time, may have lost loved ones, that sort of thing. So, how can they create a healthy mindset which is going to support their mental and emotional health whilst recovering from quite a turbulent year? Which might have taken a lot of their energy, a lot of their strength, a lot of their willpower. What would your suggestions be for that?
Yeah, well, a lot of my clients spend a lot of time ruminating about things that have happened. And, I've done that in my life too. It's hard not to. It's hard to not get stuck in everything that went wrong or everything that we don't have. So, fair warning, I'm going to get a little bit passionate here. So here's the thing. You are not your past. You are not your past. You're not your childhood trauma. You're not your parents. You're not your siblings. You're not your past relationships. You're not anything about how this year has gone, your sickness, your pain, your disabilities, your choices. You're not your past. You're not a victim. And we need to leave the past in the past, right? We need to move forward and let go of that pain. The past doesn't define you, you define you. And coming up onto my favorite subject that everyone loves, post-traumatic growth, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we've all
Yeah.
heard of post-traumatic stress, but hardly anyone hears of post-traumatic growth. You can Google it. It is
Yeah.
amazing. So it's when we take this awful, horrible past that we're stuck in and we learn from it and we grow from it and we choose to do things differently because of it. And actually, some really amazing things can come out of horrible past,
Mm.
right? So,
Yeah.
post traumatic growth, we can change our narrative with post traumatic growth and we can move forward and not let the past hold us back anymore. And you deserve to heal. we deserve to heal from all of that. And nothing is more powerful than your mind and where you decide to go with that. I mean, I've witnessed a lot of post-traumatic growth because that's what I teach, right? So if people want to sit around and whine and complain about the past, I'll listen to it once. And then I say, okay, we can't change it. We cannot change it, right? But where can we go from here? And how can we even honor it, right? Because it did happen. It is part of our experience and it has made us who we are. But we can turn it into something positive. Post-traumatic growth.
I was going to say, Melanie, because you and I talk so much about this in our own personal lives as well, which we won't go into here at this point, but our own personal lives, we've seen our own post-traumatic growth, haven't we, really? But that just made me think about, you made a really good point, actually, which was, I'll listen to it once, but then that's it. And I thought that was really good because a bit earlier in the year, I was in Sydney for a trauma conference and Bessel van der Kolk was there. And so, yeah, it was really interesting. And he was showing PET scans. So we were looking at the metabolic activity of trauma, and what happens. And he was saying talk therapy, when people talk generally over and over about their trauma, they're just amplifying and reigniting within their nervous system the same level, the same degree of trauma from the first time. And it always gets a little bit more embellished. The story gets greater every time, and that's just human nature. That wasn't said in a derogatory term, but that's what happens. Whereas I love visualization. And I know this week, for instance, I'm going to be going to a high school here in Adelaide, and we're going to be talking about business, but I'm going to be talking about growth mindset and resilient mindset. And I'm a big fan of visualization, because people can visualize traumatic and even visualize and remember narratives from things from years ago. And that, again, re-impresses huge trauma on people. If you change it, though, and visualize your plans of what you want to do, what you want to see, that has such a different shift, like metabolically on your brain as well, when you look at your brain to see what starts to light up. Because we can all picture in our heads our next holiday destination, can't we? When we're kind of going for that hike, or we're going to be sitting there feeling the sun beating on our head or back or whatever it is, we're there, but we haven't even got there yet, but we can visualize these things. And that kind of ties in, doesn't it, with the post-traumatic growth, is we use what we've learned before as a superpower. It helps us kind of create real emotional empathy. And I stress the word emotional empathy, because you can have empathy, which means you can put yourself in other people's shoes, but you can actually be quite clinical and not that, just quite clinical and go, yeah, I know what you mean. But when it's emotional empathy, you really feel it from within, don't you? That it draws you to support other people. So because of that, it kind of grows you into less of a black and white person, and makes you realize that those issues become a power that you can work with yourself and help others in the future. Does that make sense? Do you know where I'm going with that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, whatever your brain is thinking, there's consequences in your body, right? Yeah, in your nervous system. I mean, you're the expert on that. And I mean, you can just have someone, if they think about a traumatic memory, certain areas of their brain light up. Also, if they're thinking of something they're grateful for, areas of their brain light up. And when they're thinking of the trauma stuff, their brain is releasing, all kinds of stuff that puts us into flight or fight or freeze mode, right? We've talked about that before. And the opposite is true when you're thinking about gratitude, or things that bring you joy or make life worth living. Your brain is releasing chemicals which are very calming and actually increase your immune functioning. That's why happy people live longer. So I know, right? So we need to be careful about our thoughts. And in my own life, like you said, we both have our own share of trauma. And I'm a public speaker, and I used to tell my story all the time. And I never felt very good after those talks. And one day I got up there to tell my story, and I just realized I don't need to tell my story anymore. Like I've fixed my life. I mean, well, not fixed it, but you know what I mean. Like I've
Yeah.
moved on. I've moved on from all of that. I'm healthy. I'm happy. And I got up in front of this audience and I said, I was going to tell you my story, but I don't need to say it anymore. I mean, it was like I didn't want to be stuck in it anymore. So I said, I'm going to tell you my post-traumatic growth story, right?
Yeah.
And that was so energizing. And so after that, it just made me realize we really have to be careful what we're thinking and what we're saying, because it determines everything.
It does. And I know that people have reached out over the years about episodes within my podcast and how it's resonated with them, how it's brought tears, as if it's like me talking directly to them. And the thing is, I've never gone down that negative slant, but what I've done is pulled out and created like ways to learn from something without ever alluding to anything. But if someone's been there, you know it. You hear something, you're like, I think I know she's been through something hard.
Yep.
But we don't need to go into that. But what we've done is we've switched it around and gone, how can we learn from this? And how can we then shift what was a bit of a maybe a mess or a sadness or a heartbreak in our life? How can we change that mess into like a message, so that we actually then create something that we can serve and give people, so that they can also start to create that growth mindset too.
That's actually the cherry on the whipped cream on the ice cream sundae that you just mentioned of post-traumatic growth. It's when you do all that work, you've learned from it, you've grown from it, you're doing things differently because of it. And then you turn around and help others. And I've never heard that. Turn your mess into a message. I love that. I'm going to use that from now on. That is fantastic. Turn your mess into a message, right?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that why we're here?
Yeah.
Isn't that why we're all here? We're here to
Yeah.
help each other and love each other and show compassion and empathy and impact the lives of others with all the stuff that we've been through. So you're
And
brilliant.
oh, no. But I was going to say, I think what's really important, Melanie, as well, and this shows it, is the community and that collaboration, that connection, because with things like COVID, it separated people more. And like you and I mean, you've got your sleeveless top on because you're in the Northern Hemisphere enjoying the sun. I've got the heating on here with my jumper on in Australia. And we've come together, and we can say that there is a silver lining to things like COVID. It forced people to go online. We connected during the whole COVID period. And it just creates a bond that we haven't met, but one day we will meet in person. But there's that bond, and other people listening to this as well, that we're creating that community so that we can get together, even if it's virtually at this point. But it's nice to meet like-minded individuals as well.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, connection is the number one thing that contributes to longevity.
Yes.
So make sure you've got people in your life that you love and they love you back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I always feel so energized after you and I talk.
No, I don't want to kind of, because we're talking so upbeat and we're up here, and I don't want to keep feeling like I'm pulling these questions back down, but there are people listening and they still just need that support. So we'll kind of be fluctuating a bit. And I was going to say that there are people that are like incredibly worn down with things that have gone on, and they need a new approach to support themselves to go forward, but they don't need that added pressure. It's like they've got a lot going on. The thought of changing whole mindset can be quite a lot to add to, they're probably at capacity with their nervous system and with life generally. But how could they realistically achieve a subtle shift? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to really be aware of like what your go-tos are when you're feeling stressed or you're feeling overwhelmed. A lot of people are smokers or drinkers or eaters. After a hard day, I love to pour myself a glass of wine, but I got to be careful because one glass tastes so good, you want another glass, and then the bottle's gone, and then you feel terrible the next day, right? But The struggle's real. The struggle is real. And the reason that we do reach for things like those is really, it's not your fault. It is because your brain releases dopamine when you do those things, and dopamine feels good. So what we need to do, and also, it's a quick fix, right? If I go eat a piece of chocolate, well, my brain's going to release dopamine and I'm going to feel instantly better. So that's why we eat. We eat comfort food, or we drink, or we smoke. Quick fixes, dopamine, immediate dopamine. So what we want to do is, there are other ways. The good news is there are other ways to get dopamine. Takes a little bit longer, but you can do it. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to make a list of things that you love. And I tell people, think about like when you do something and you go, right? Well, that's the same thing someone does when they're smoking, right? They take a drag and go, or after I have my sip of wine, I go, right? Or after I eat that cookie, I go, but we need to find those healthy things that make us go, and that is also dopamine. So maybe it's a walk outside, maybe it's petting your dog, maybe it's lighting a candle and having a cup of tea. Like, it's important to notice your things and have a list, and to try to interrupt that pattern of going straight for that thing. A lot of people say, oh, take a few minutes first or something like that. But I'm like, you just have your list on your refrigerator and you just go to your list, and hopefully it'll pass. Right. Yeah. But I think it's really important to think about, we want to live, right? And smoking, drinking, overeating, those types of things are really contributing to dying, right? And we want to live. So kind of getting that in there. I don't know if you've heard of Bronnie Ware, but she's an Australian author, and she wrote a memoir called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And the first one is that I wish I'd lived a life true to myself. Okay, because a lot of times we do what other people expect us to do. And a lot of times when we're reaching for those quick dopamines, it's because our inside isn't matching our outside. And so living a life true to ourselves, we actually don't need those vices, right? Yeah. I think I'll just tell you all 5 because they're fascinating.
Do.
Yeah. The second one is, I wish I hadn't worked so hard.
Yeah.
Well, why am I reaching for that wine at the end of a long day? I worked too hard, right? So maybe if I take some more breaks or take a look at my schedule and see what I can do to make more space for myself, I wouldn't need that. Number 3 is, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings, right? I am an emotional eater, and I know a lot of people who are, and we need to learn how to express our feelings to ourselves and others, right? Number 4, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. Well, there's that connection thing, right? And loneliness actually does contribute to heart disease. You can die of loneliness. And the last one is, I wish I'd allowed myself to be happier.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? So she has a TED Talk that I watched, and it was just fabulous, because I think if we look at that, so she was a palliative care nurse. So she spent a lot of time with people who were dying and got this information, right? And I think if we contemplate all of that, it helps us focus on living. And although life can be hard, it's so hard. We know, right? We know how hard it can be. Let's focus on living and having long, happy lives, and not having any regrets, living true to ourselves, connecting with others, and allowing ourselves to be happy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true. It makes me think of, I think, if I'm incorrect about this, please let me know in the comments below, but I think it was Michael Gerber in the E-Myth, and he talks about visualizing this moment that you walk into a room, and you walk into the room and there's all these people around you that you know that have been in your life over the years. And as you walk further into the room, you notice in front of you there's a box, and in that box is you, and you've come to your own funeral. And what would those people be saying at your funeral? What is it? What are the things that you did in your life that they remember? And you've just said it beautifully, because it's like, what was their focus? Did they serve people? Did they give to people? Did they, were they kind, or was it all pretty ruthless in their way? It's like just assessing how it is. So as you say, considering these things, and again, can you see I'm all about visualization? It's so powerful, that visualization of how can we keep reassessing and looking, because that's the reality of it. Is you mentioned about that loneliness. I was in Sydney recently, and somebody was giving a presentation, and she said that apparently loneliness now has the same effect on the body as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So that's
It does.
really strong stuff. And
Mhm.
I was talking to somebody else again recently, and you're mentioning this, and it's about that connection again, because a lot of people are feeling lonely. And somebody was chatting to me recently saying how lonely she felt. And then the next time I saw her, she said, I've got this new friend. And I said, wonderful. What did you do? And she said, well, every day I walk the dog. And this is something that everybody could take from this, because I thought it's so good. When you go on your walks, you see the same people all the time if you've got your routine. So you say hello, you might smile initially, then you say hello, then the dog might have a poo. And while the dog's having a poo, you're like chatting about the dog and the weather and things. And it just evolves bit by bit. And this person actually said to the lady I was talking to, she said, do you fancy meeting for a coffee? And she went, oh, yeah. So they met for a coffee, and they had a lovely chat, and they've got that connection now. And you look and you think both of them were probably feeling quite lonely, but somebody thought, let me take that jump today, see if they'll say yes. But they felt comfortable enough that they'd had those little chats before. So again, that's connection, isn't it? Exactly what you're saying. And it could be that somebody is worn down. They haven't got a lot of bandwidth left in their system, but just to smile at someone that you recognize on a regular walk, and maybe just saying weather's nice today, or you can build up that connection, and you don't know where that could take you. Just
Mhm.
again, maybe breaking that loneliness or that overwhelm that you feel.
I'll back that up. She decided to go for a walk,
Yeah, that's right.
right? And she
Yeah,
decided to look up on her walk.
yeah,
Like there's so many things that went into that. And look at the amazing thing that came out of it, right?
that's
But she
right.
got out of her house. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I know that's hard to do. I know for some of you listening or watching that that's really hard to do.
yeah,
I know.
yeah. Yeah. And it is hard to do. It's like for instance, tomorrow, because I've got this week off at work, and I'm making an effort to kind of catch up with a friend, and we're going to go for a couple of hours on the beach for a walk. And it takes effort, because to be fair, the two of us are incredibly busy. We've managed to put these 2 hours aside, and you can always find things to be busy and doing and things like that. But we've made that time. And if we didn't, it would probably take us another month to catch up with each other because of our schedules. So it does take effort. And it's just if we're willing to put that effort in as well. And once you've made that commitment and it's stuck in the diary, you're going to stick with it, really, aren't you? That's the thing.
Yes. Yeah. Put it on the calendar.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I was going to say, looking at like as we move forward, and again, it depends on when people are picking up this episode. There are different seasonal holidays in different parts of the world. So, of course, everyone's got their different holidays that they'll be noticing and part of. But those holidays can sometimes trigger past events, or maybe current family dynamics can be quite challenging, because a lot of the time they wouldn't be together, and they're sometimes put together as a bit of food, a bit of alcohol. The old truth serum certainly throws a few things out and puts a spanner in the works, and all these sorts of things. How can people manage their emotions during these events, and kind of what proactive approaches would you say people can can create when they're attending events where there may be family members that could be quite challenging and triggering for their nervous system?
Yeah, wow. That's a loaded question, right? But it reminds me when I was a kid, um, my mom was always not very nice, like around the holidays. And my dad would say, "Don't bother mom. She's got holiday stress." And I always wondered, what is holiday stress? Like, she's in the kitchen. "I gotta do this and I gotta do that." I'm like, why? Why do you have to do that? Right. So I've got lots of information on this one, but the first one is, again, just self-care, extreme self-care. Take extra care of yourself during the holidays. It is a hard time. It's busy. There's lots of expectations. And yeah, maybe you've got drunk Uncle Bob sitting on the couch. It's like, come on. But let's focus on what's really important. So I tell people, make a list of all the things you need to do, cross off half, and then take the other half and delegate them so that you have a very small list. And take your calendar or your diary and schedule blank time.
Yeah.
Literally schedule blank time, so that the holidays are not so busy, not so stressful. There's not a big, long to-do list. Like, see how many things you can say no to, right? And then when you get to those, the family things, those can be really hard. So I always recommend take your own transportation.
Yeah, very
Arrive
good.
late, leave early, or at least you can if you want to, so you're not stuck there with somebody. Wear some clothing that you feel comfortable and confident in. Bring your own snacks or your own drinks if you need to do that. And the best advice I got once was bring a game or an activity so that the focus can be on that instead of the family stress. Or if there's children at the event, well, that's great. Just go play with the kids.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm taking the kids to the park while the dinner's cooking,
Yeah.
Yeah, stay out of the kitchen, But I just think that it is hard, but there are some things that you can do to make it easier on yourself. And again, I think our whole theme today is being compassionate towards yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and focus on what's important to you.
Yeah. And I think that's so true. I overheard a conversation after Christmas just gone between two ladies, and it was so interesting. And really from this, I'd say added to what you said is not to have those high expectations, because this woman said something really interesting. She said, "How was Christmas?" And this lady went, "Yeah, we're not great." And she said, "Oh, really?" She said, "Well, the reality is the build up to Christmas is what's huge." She said, "You got all these expectations for what it's going to be like on the day. And when the day came," she said, "it all hit the fan because everybody builds up for this one day and they're all forced into a room together where people might not really get together that often. And it's this anticipation that it's got to be this wonderful thing." But, I'm going to pull out from what you mentioned again here is that if it is fraught, if it's a bit intense, just get out of the situation, go for a walk, because you're moving your body, you're shifting and changing the state of your nervous system, you're diffusing a situation that's there. And to be fair, you can't be exercised. It probably is better that you go for that walk, you go to a wood or something, and you just have a good shout at the tree, the poor little tree. But get it out there instead of saying something that once you say, you can't bring it back, you can't take it back, and it will be thrown at you forever and a day afterwards. So and when I say this, Melanie, I'm sure you kind of get my drift on this, and I hope everyone else does, is when people are trying to sometimes provoke in a dynamic, try and stand back and be a little bit more objective and take a deep breath and think, Wow. Because a lot of the time when people are putting things on you, they're projecting their own stuff, their
Yes.
unresolved things that they haven't dealt with. And they have no insight in that. And so they try and project it on you. So it can be very difficult, especially if people have had a bit of alcohol and their senses might be a little bit dulled. But if you can stop and think, a lot of this is not about me, it's about them, and it's their inner
Yes,
child.
right? Yeah.
Sometimes their inner child stuff. A lot of stuff you can hear a child, can't you, that's kind of because it can be quite juvenile sometimes, the narrative, and it's a lot of wounded inner child things that are coming out too.
Mhm. Yeah, and you've heard the saying, hurt people hurt, right?
Yes.
So if someone's hurting you, it's their own stuff. That's not your stuff. You know,
Mhm.
healthy, happy people, they don't hurt others. They don't
Yeah.
criticize others. They don't put others down. They don't
Mhm.
gossip about others, you know. So hurt people hurt. Don't absorb that at all. Yeah, if someone's hurting you, leave.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's family. Like
Well,
they'll
it's boundaries. It's boundaries,
yeah,
isn't it, Melanie? Because
boundaries.
at the end of
Yep,
it's boundaries. At the end of the
yep,
day, they might be your blood, they might be your family. But if somebody in the street started talking to you like that, you go, I'm not having that. And in
right.
some cases, you might go, that's abuse. I'm
Yep.
not having that. And you have enough of your own self-respect to think, I need to protect my own emotional, mental, energetic, you know, everything, my emotional, physical health.
Yep.
And I'm not going there. So and it might be that you're the one who's breaking that link within the family, and it can be confronting for people, because people that are obviously listening to this podcast are interested in self-growth and development and post-traumatic growth, so they
Yes.
might find this as being a challenge. That's why it makes me think, you know, it's nice for people to know that you can break that trauma link if that's within a family.
Yeah, you get to
Yeah.
decide what you tolerate and what you don't tolerate. So this holiday season, say no, thank you.
Yeah. Speak to the hand.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'll leave my hand here and off I go for a walk. Don't know how that's gonna work, but
Exactly.
I was going to say, Melanie, you know, what kind of 5 takeaway points would you like to share with everybody as we're kind of coming to a close with our discussion? Although I could talk all day with you because it's so
I
brilliant.
know, it's so fun. I think number one would be always find something to be grateful for. There's always something to be grateful for, right? Number two, live in the now. The past is dead. Ruminating about the past is not going to change anything. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. So spending all your time worrying about that, most of what we worry about doesn't happen, right? So live in the now. Number three, connect with others. That is the most important thing we can do. Um, Number four, be true to yourself, like that number one regret of the dying. Um, you know, I wish I would have lived my life true to myself. So be true to yourself today. Start right now. Be true to yourself. What are you thinking? How are you feeling? What is something you need to change in your life? You know, if you need help doing that, there's a lot of people out there that can help you, right? Okay. And number five, I would say prioritize your health. These bodies of ours need to last 100 years, right? So drink your water, get your sleep, eat lots of real food and lots of colors, and move your body. So I know that was more than five, but yeah.
Five plus bonuses.
Yeah, five
And
plus.
I
I
think
had
that
to
is
get that in there. Yeah. Yeah. Had to
it
get that
kind
in
of
there.
made me, yeah, it kind of made me think also about, so when you said our beautiful bodies as well, is that we're so keen on like polishing and looking after furniture or a car, which can be replaced. But it's like sometimes the last thing of our our care list or job list is to do something for ourselves, isn't it? And to take care of ourselves. And yet we've all been in situations when we've been sick that we thought, oh my goodness, when one system goes out of kilter, everything else ripples. And that's when you realize how intricate we are. And when everything's humming along nicely, we can take it for granted. I mean, I see it, you know, people say to me here in clinic that when they're feeling well, they don't do their movements, they don't do their somatic movements because they feel really well. It's only when the pain comes back they think I better do it, you know. And it's just human nature, isn't it, that that's what we do.
I get the
Yeah,
same thing with my happiness coaching clients. You know, oh, I'm feeling great, I don't need to come. I'm like, what? That's the best time. Let's figure out why you're feeling great. That's your plan,
that's
right?
right.
But
That's
but
right.
yeah, I think, you know, maybe we need to do another podcast on just kind of loving, appreciating, and accepting our bodies and
Yeah,
forgiving our bodies.
yeah.
That would be a whole nother podcast, but that's so important. We need to take care of our bodies.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
mean you've gone and said that now, and my mind's brimming with ideas,
I'm
but I know
sorry.
everyone's gotta get off. Although, yeah, one day we will get together, Melanie. We'll do a retreat. We'll do something, and it will be so lovely to do that. You know, because my plans are to come over to North America at some point, and so we will catch up and that sort of thing.
Oh
Definitely.
yeah, we're going to do retreat, health and happiness and movement and loving and accepting and forgiving our bodies. Yes.
Yeah. So if you're
Oh,
listening to this, everybody, let us know. Reach out to us or let us know in the comments below if you're watching on the Total Somatics YouTube channel, because really this isn't just empty words. We really want to do something like this because you and I talk quite often, don't we, Melanie, about this? And it's an area that, especially in recent years, people still need to get that regulation back into their nervous system. And you know, connection is so important. It's great connecting this way, but you can't be in person. So yeah, we
right.
will do something at some point, but you know, keep in touch, everybody. Let us know if you know Melanie. Reach out to Melanie. If you know me and you've got my contacts. But I was going to say that kind of is a segue, Melanie, of
Mhm.
how can people learn more about you, and that way they can find out more about you, but then let you know about us getting together at some point in the future.
Yes, well, I have this wonderful, wonderful assistant. Her name is Krista Potter, and she's up in Canada, and she does all of my digital stuff for me. And she made this page, melaniecool.com/links. melaniecool.com/links. And you can, if you go there, it'll take you to my website. It'll take you to my free offerings. It'll take you to my free Facebook community. It'll take you to where you can schedule a free call for me. It's just all there in one place. It's beautiful. I didn't do it. Krista did.
And
But
I
it's
just want, I
great.
was going to say, Melanie, we're going to put it all in the show notes, but I just want to double check something because I know you sent me the link through. Yeah, can I just clarify this in anyone's listening? It's melaniecool.com and then there's the /links because I thought you
Yes.
mentioned that without /. So melaniecool.com /links.
Yep.
Because but we'll put it in the show notes as well. But I just thought, did you
Yeah.
mention the
Thank you.
/, or maybe I just had a memory lapse there? Sorry, but I thought I'll just
Yeah.
double check that, Melanie, because it's this. You've
I
got so many
actually, I'm
resources.
not very techie, so I don't really know what way the slashes go.
Well, there's probably more of a technical term for it, but I always say /. But as you and I, before we came on live, we both said we still live in the 90s with our notes sellotaped all around our monitors. You know? So
Yeah,
we're keeping it real. We're keeping it real. So.
we are keeping it real. I love it.
Oh, brilliant. So
Yes.
thank you so, so much for today, Melanie. And I know everybody will really appreciate a lovely dose of you because every time we get together, it's like I can feel all your energy coming the other side of the world here. And hopefully everyone else feels it. So, and I, you know, hopefully we will get together very soon or at some
Yeah.
point we'll get together. But yeah, everybody watching this, please let us know if you're interested and we will look at
I could
doing
come
something
to
together.
Australia.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
So
We
yeah,
could
it'd be
do one,
brilliant.
we could do one in each place.
Or that would even be better, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And we'll try and time it so we're in each other's summers. That would be even
Yeah,
better again.
right.
So, but thank you so much, everybody, for today. And I was going to say, before we leave, is there anything that we haven't brought out, Melanie, that you'd like to finish off with?
I just want to let everyone know that you are never too old and it's never too late. And you have a lot more control over your health and happiness than you know. So please reach out to Heidi, reach out to me. We are here to support you in your journey, and there's always hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And also added to that, don't feel that your comments, your questions, anything that you want to reach out to us, don't think it's not important, because it really is, and every question is really important. So there's no silly question. And you know, if we've got any issues with our self-esteem or self-worth, we understand, don't we, Melanie? And we're there to support and help you every step of the way. So if you've got that voice that's stopping you from reaching out to us, let it go quiet, and remember, we're there on the other end for you.
Yes, the most important thing is where you go from here.
Exactly right. Exactly
Yep.
right. And it's a
Yep.
big thing for them just to be here listening to us today. They've made
Yeah.
that first step, and then they
Yeah.
can reach out to us very easily. So thank you so much. I'm blowing lots of kisses your way, Melanie. I'm blowing them out to every listener and watching this on the YouTube channel too. So thank you so much. And from Melanie and myself, thank you again for joining us today. We're sending all our love and all our very best wishes to you all. And as always, if you've enjoyed this episode and you've seen any others and anything resonates with you, if you're watching this on the Total Somatics YouTube channel, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and press the notification bell. So every time a new episode is released, you'll be the first to find out. And as I mentioned before, Melanie has been in previous episodes. So if you have a look within the podcast platform that you're listening to this, or on YouTube, you can find our discussion. But what I'll do to make life easier is I can also put it in the show notes, and I'll put that with Melanie's links as well. So it just makes it much more convenient for you, because we're all pressed for time from time to time. So as I said, all my love, and all Melanie's love as well. And we'll see you all next time. All my love. Bye. Thank you for joining me today. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and also forward this on to somebody you know will benefit. To learn more about pain relief, plus how to improve your health and well-being, go to totalsomatics.com. Until next time, take care.